And we are in his week. We are starting week 6 of the story. And while we're still in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, we're moving right along, which means after this week we'll be 1/5 done. That's all the way I like fractions, you know. So, hopefully you're going to enjoy this week in your reading as you see God continuing to unfold His story to all of humanity. So one up here, Dave. One up here too, I think. Does everybody get one? Okay. How many of you have ever taken a trip with children in the car? Okay, have you ever taken a trip with children in the car? How many of you have ever heard the question, are we there yet? It doesn't matter what language, what culture, there is something about us when we start a journey that we are impatient, and I admit to being a very impatient driver. Somebody asked me a question this week, would you rather drive 50 extra miles and be moving or sit in traffic? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, what if it took you an extra hour to drive 50 extra miles rather than sit in traffic? I said, yeah, because we always want to be moving. And the difficulty when you have children in the back seat, of course, is that we can't seem to really see where we're going. Even with the GPS, we can't really see where we're going. And so today, you know, we have vans and cars that have TV screens. We never had any of that. And when I was traveling with my parents, we just had the back of one of my parents' hands, usually. You know, and did your parents ever, and I've learned to say the same thing to my children, which is, I can stop this car, and I can turn around, and we'll go right back to where we started from. Well, we pick up the Bible today, and we're reading the story out of Numbers and Deuteronomy. We have the story of Moses, and Moses with perhaps up to 1 million people. So imagine having 1 million people in the back seats, and they're all asking the same question. When are we going to be there? Are we there yet? And so even though they were at the mountain at Sinai, and that's where we left them last week, they are beginning to move, and they have organized at this point to some extent. And so it seems like it's the time now for them to move from that portion of the desert up to the land that God has promised to give them. And so that's where you're going to begin your reading this week and picking up the story and understanding it. Now, I'm going to actually read the scripture today that is in front of you, which is at the end of that particular section. And this is what it says. Now, what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven, so that you have to ask, who will ascend into heaven to get it? And proclaim it to us so we may obey it. Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you will have to ask, who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it? No, the word is very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so you may obey it. Remember, God gave it to him on tablets, right? See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands and decrees and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering. But if your heart turns away and you are not obedient, and if you draw away or bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings. Now choose life so that you and your children may live, that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the end of the story, actually. That's what Moses speaks right before he dies. But before he gets to that point, he gets the masses to leave Sinai. And you might remember that while they were there in Sinai, God was giving them manna. Remember that little kind of like coriander seed they said? It was on the ground every morning for them to eat. But the people were not satisfied. That's kind of the story of life, isn't it, with people? Why weren't they satisfied? Well, they craved the good old days. And so sooner, when people go into something new, none of us really like what's new. Even though you might have, when you're younger, probably have a point in your life where you like the adventure part of it. But there's always something about the familiar that we crave. That's why you can go to South America or Russia or to China and find a McDonald's and find Coca-Cola. And any of those places, why? Because it all started because Americans craved what they left behind here. And so if you're from a different country, Africans come here, they want fufu. And it's hard to find a good fast food fufu place. But you crave the good old days. And so people always crave the good old days, and they always imagine, I'm following down through here so it'll be easy to fill your blanks in there. They always imagine the past much better than it really was. When you think about your past, we tend to romanticize the past. We make it better than it was. Do I long for the good old days when my car had 140,000 miles on it? Not really. Now it only has like 90,000 on it. So, and we focus on what we don't have, and that's what they did, rather than what they did have. God was giving them food, but that wasn't satisfactory to them. They longed for what was familiar. And so as a result of that, the story is they complained for meat. And God, you complain long enough. Did you ever have somebody tell you, be careful what you wish for? Be careful what you pray for. Because occasionally, God relents to us and he says, okay, that's what you want? I'm going to give it to you. And we know that the quail came in off of the sea, whatever this bird was that they're calling quail, and they came in and somehow they had like a massive crash above the camp. So these birds were flying into each other and knocking each other silly and falling onto the ground, literally to the point that they were better than knee-deep. And the people, oh man, meat tonight. We're having quail for dinner. And tomorrow night, and the next night, and the night after. And pretty soon, if you have enough quail, you're going to start to vomit it. And that's what it means about it coming through their noses. God gave them what they wanted, but even that was not satisfactory to them. And in one sense, this part of the story is about Moses' leadership and the struggle with that. I call it Leadership 101. First of all, what happens when you have a big crowd and you're trying to move them somewhere? The crowd always imagines the life of the leader to be more glamorous than it really is. Now, if you sit in the pew on Sunday morning, you might sometimes think, oh man, I wish I could be up there and people would be spellbound by what I say. And I'm standing up here thinking, how in the world can I get these people to listen to me? Spellbound? You've never spoken in front of people if you're trying to hold their attention longer than about 20 seconds. So people, when they're being asked to move in mass, begin to look at their leader, and they imagine their leader, has a much more glamorous life than he does. There have been days in the church here where right before service I have had the plunger back at the toilet, That's the life of a leader, not the life people imagine it to be. So leaders struggle when they're trying to move people, and Moses struggled, and what happened was his inside circle, Aaron and Miriam, his brother and sister, began to attack him. They began to believe that they could do as good a job as he could. And any leader knows that the most devastating attacks that anybody faces are the attacks of people closest to you. Why does it happen? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons here. We won't look at all of them. But let me say something that's true about the church that you need to understand. The church is not a democracy. The spiritual leadership is not democratic. It is not about how many people vote for you. If Moses was trying to get votes, you understand he lost the vote. Moses always loses the vote, and then God comes in and equals the sides. Because what does God come in? God comes in and throws fire on the edge of the camp, and the angel of death that comes around, and Moses always kind of gets his votes corrected, but he loses. So we need to understand that in leading a group of people, it is not about democracy. God chooses leaders. We don't elect them. They are chosen by God. So now I understand that we're in America, and America is big on democracy, but you understand, what you're going to see in this story, that when the people get to the promised land, they take a vote about going in. And the vote is, we're not going to go. And Moses said, God said we're to go. Okay, you tell me who was the leader. The leader was who God appointed, not the vote. So, the third thing there, I guess, under that struggles of a leader, is that just because you form a committee doesn't mean you reach the right conclusion. Moses, I think, seeing his problem, forms a committee to go into the land. They go into the land, the spies go in, but what they come back with, for the most part, is that the committee votes and they say we shouldn't go in. Because what happens? They see the obstacles. They see that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to take the land. You know, a land flowing with milk and honey produced big people. And so they saw the people, and most of the committee, out of the 12 spies, 10 of them saw big obstacles. 2 of them saw big opportunities. But the committee voted, and the vote was 10-2. Let's not go. Again, it was a committee, but it should have been advisory, not determinative.